I would say don't be afraid to annoy people. Like push
Of
them,
course.
persist, keep reaching out because if you're sure that, it's a story that you can really see
Hmm.
in their paper, then annoy them.
Welcome to Postgrads. Two Columbia J School alumni walk into a bar. Olivia, what do you think the punchline should be?
I think I'd have to ask them, what was your worst J school moment?
Totally. That's a question we ask our peer every time. So today we have Olivia Empson. She's a freelancer journalist whose works have been featured in The Guardian's Vanity Fair, Reuters, and many more. Thank you for joining us today, Olivia.
Thank you for having me on.
So, Olivia, let's talk about your upbringing. What inspired you to be a journalist?
So I was born in London and it's where I grew up. I went to college, I did my undergrad in the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and I graduated at quite a weird time. It was peak pandemic. There wasn't really any jobs going on, or, most places weren't even taking applicants for grad schemes that I'd been looking to do for years, one being the Reuters one. And I thought, you know what, this is probably a good time to do my master's now, a few years earlier than I thought I would. So I took a chance and applied to Columbia and was over the moon when I got in. And that was where I kind of first really realized I wanted to be a journalist because the teachers I had at that school were unbelievable. And I learned so much about the trade while I was there. And that really solidified this is exactly what I want to do.
So you actually realize you want to be a journalist when you enter the J school,
I had
or
a
a little
suspicion that,
before.
the skills I kind of thought I had or was good at would transfer really well to an industry like journalism, but I think that was confirmed when I went to grad school. I hadn't had much experience outside of student newspapers. While I was at Edinburgh, I wrote for one of the student newspapers, and I really enjoyed that. But I think it was obviously Columbia that confirmed that this would be a really good career to get into.
But you entered the J school during the peak of pandemic. How did that feel like?
I think it's a great question. It's obviously a really weird time to start school. I was quite young when I went to J school, I think, compared to other people in my class. I just turned 21 or 20, maybe I was turning 22. And it was a weird time to start school because I was flying halfway across the world and none of my family could come and help me. I think that was the first thing. Like flights to the UK, you had to have a visa to be able to get on a flight from the UK to the US at that point. And it was just a really weird time to start school. It was a difficult time to meet new people.
How did you manage to do the reporting, especially journalism, relying on human connection heavily?
Yeah,
That quarantine or the social distancing present so many challenges for you, right?
definitely. I think by the time classes got into full swing and we were out of the boot camp stages and yeah, the reporting, I think that class was 8 weeks, right? By the time those classes finished, things in New York had kind of opened back up and I was able to do a lot of the reporting in person, which was great because, like you say, so much of reporting is going out and meeting people and building connections with them.
Yeah. As a foreign journalist, living, studying, working in a foreign country, what do you think are the most challenging?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, the most challenging part about reporting and working in a different country was just learning everything about the institutions of that place. Like when I moved here, there was a lot I didn't know about American politics, how things like Congress worked, how even local government in New York, what the setup of that was like. And I think when you're at J school, for instance, and you're reporting on a lot of different things, having that kind of knowledge is really important. And in my job since graduating, having a really deep understanding of like American political institutions has been really important. And there's obviously so much to learn when it's something that you're not familiar with and it's different, it's a different system to where you've grown up. So I think really learning the ins and outs of how this country runs politically has been probably the biggest challenge and the area in which I've had to learn and grow the most. I've been doing a lot of reporting about Texas recently for The Guardian, and they have amazing local news outlets. Like the Texas Tribune is amazing for local stories and kind of understanding how different policies play out in that area. So I think local news can be a really, really good way to kind of get a better understanding of where you're traveling to and kind of what to expect.
You also a content contributor to many different publishers for a long time. How's your relationship with different editors?
That's a great question. Well, there's definitely some that I prefer working with than others. Some I have a really, really great relationship with because they're very attentive. And if I am filing a story for them, they're very happy to get on the phone and answer questions because, like we just spoke about, you can't know everything. And it's okay to ask questions and ask for help sometimes. And I think there's certain editors I have relationships with who are so helpful, who are so willing to engage and speak over the phone. And it's not just a kind of email correspondence. Like one of the magazines I contribute to, I was just in the office now speaking through my next 4 stories with the editors in person, which was lovely. Like they invited me into the office and kind of asked me to come in and chat through the angles and like what we were expecting from the story. So that's really helpful. But yeah, it can be hard sometimes managing relationships with a bunch of different publications and managing personalities that might be more difficult than others. And I think that's kind of such a big part of this job is understanding different personalities and managing those.
And how do you deal your relationship with like big publishers, for example, the Guardians, Reuters, and Vanity Fair? They're so famous. What's your techniques or tricks to try to convince them to publish your work?
I think kind of how I got started with this and what's really important is just being persistent. I think it can be so hard and kind of so intimidating trying to play stories in these outlets that feel really big and have a big readership and can kind of feel a bit scary to approach. But I think if you have a really good story and you've really done your research and you can be sure that it's going to fit in with the kind of content they're looking for, I would say don't be afraid to annoy people. Like push
Of
them,
course.
persist, keep reaching out because if you're sure that, it's a story that you can really see
Hmm.
in their paper, then annoy them.
Yeah, like when you say annoying them, do you mean keep
I mean,
keep
oh yeah.
hunting there?
I think like my technique when I was at grad school, because I was trying to publish stuff while I was at Columbia, and I had my first story for The Guardian in December of my year at Columbia. And I remember just kind of tweeting and I'm at, how you can like at on X an editor. I just remember atting the same editor like 3 times. And eventually he replied to my email. So
Wow.
I think, yeah, some people might be more frustrated by that than others, but that kind of worked and it opened a new door.
I saw you have been to the Met Gala. What a fantasy land for
Oh,
fashion reporters and designers. How was your experience there? What
that
have
was
you
my
seen?
dream gig. I have always wanted to go to the Met Gala. I'm obsessed with like celebrity news every time
How's
it
Lisa looking?
I know, yeah. Every time that event rolls around, I just like can't wait for the outfits. I'm sure it's such an exciting event. And I was there and I did have a great position on the red carpet, but it wasn't actually that glamorous because the job I was doing was I was basically a runner. So Reuters have an incredible setup of entertainment reporters who are veterans in this game. They go every year. They have the same people doing interviews, the same camera people filming it, but a lot of the camera people are kind of a bit older. And my editor at Reuters at the time turned to me and said, "We need someone who's gonna know who all the celebrities are. Would you come and help?" So my job basically was to stand behind the camera person and say, "Yep, that's Suki Waterhouse. Oh,
It's time you should
yeah,
press.
yeah, press now. That's Carly Kloss." So that was that was basically my job. And after they'd taken a lot of photos and videos, I would just run our SD cards back to the press room, help ingest all the files, help edit the pieces if I could, and then run straight back to the red carpet and try
That's
and
a dream
see.
job.
It
You
was,
just
yeah, it
described.
was amazing. It was, it was really, really cool.
So, do you think Columbia journalism graduate's title helped or didn't help you in your job hunting process?
I think the name does go a long way. It's a really prestigious school, and I think a lot of people have respect and a kind of an understanding of the work that goes in, not just getting a place on the program, but also getting through the program and graduating. So I think the name definitely does help, but I think the most important part about Columbia Journalism School is definitely the people you meet in your class. I think if I have advice for anyone, it would be to really nurture those connections and, don't be overly competitive. Don't get on people's bad sides. At the end of the day, like, the people that you're in the class with are people that could help you so much in the future. And I think maintaining relationships with people that you like studying alongside is so important, and kind of much more important, honestly, than the name itself being on your resume, is the friends and the contacts that you make in the class there. It's really important.
I remember when professor said to us in class that, oh, cherish the people around you. They may be your connection in the future and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I really understand that saying because right now we have shared memories studying at J School. In your personal website, you mentioned I can shoot, edit in Premiere Pro, and writing breaking news and feature story under time pressure. Why particularly point out time pressure? Any funny story happened behind the scene?
Yeah, well, I think time pressure is a huge part of the job, especially when you're working in a breaking news cycle. And my last job, which ended in June, I was the overnight editor at Reuters. So my hours were 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I was the only person on the US desk during those hours. Any breaking news stories that happened in the US between those hours, I would have to shoot, edit videos, about that. Mostly edit, not so much shooting because it was the middle of the night. But I was editing and turning around sometimes up to 10 videos a night. So that was where I really learned how to kind of work under time pressure and meet deadlines, because it was just me, and Reuters kind of had a we need to be first to the news attitude. So there was no seconds to spare in that process. It was just go, 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 go. One of the times I was working from home and I had a power cut, and it was during a really important moment of a story, and all of the lights went out of my flat, and it was 4 a.m. So there was no natural light even. And I had to call one of the people in London and just explain that I had a power cut. And I just remember them being like, where are you? What's
Where
going
are
on? I
you?
was like, I'm at home. They were like, okay, we've got this, but that's just not a good moment.
Yeah, I can imagine that, especially when you're mental stress and you
It's
have a deadline.
it's so high, yeah.
You're from London, England, and your time in reporting American policies, especially constantly among the MAGA crowds. Have you encountered any hindrance or adversary, and how have you managed them?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's a really sensitive topic to cover, and especially with everything going on right now, tensions are quite high. So, the way that you get sources for these kind of stories and the way that you develop relationships is you almost kind of have a friendly rapport with some of these people, especially if they're young people in the movement. You build a relationship, you get information from them, they become like trusted sources. But I think maintaining professionalism is always so important, because sometimes it can be easy just to communicate with someone like they're a friend of yours after you've spoken to them so much. But I think, you know, always double check what you're sending and how you're phrasing things, because there's definitely been moments recently where I've had some retaliation just from the way I've phrased a message. And it's really important, I think, just to remember, this is my source, this is my job, this isn't a friend. I have to be so careful about how I word things.
Yeah. I remember watching your videos about mega group in campus, and you specifically kept the conflict. At that moment, what were you thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, our first thought was this is going to be great for the piece, because in any kind of good short documentary, you want a moment of tension. And we were just like, thank God this is happening and we're here, because this is exactly what we wanted to see play out, was a moment where another student was challenging what this Republican chairwoman was saying. We wanted someone to challenge it. And that was going to come from my line of questioning later on in the interview. But it was almost quite a relief that someone else had stepped in and asked some of the questions that, we were going to have to push later.
And they didn't cut you not filming them or
No, I think they were both very happy having both of their perspectives on camera.
it's so important for journalists to present both sides idea in the same piece. Are there some degrees of distrust in reporters among them?
There's definitely a lot of distrust towards the media right now. I think there's kind of big media conflicts playing out on both sides, certain political figures not trusting certain outlets. I feel like these are kind of arguments I'm seeing play out on my social feeds all the time. So I think there is a lot of distrust right now for the media. And I think being a young reporter, being freelance, and also like not being from the US is really helpful because you're not so associated with where this distrust is coming from. And I think people are more open to speaking to like non-traditional reporters at this time.
Mm-hmm. And what skills that Columbia Journalism School have taught to you that you are most grateful of?
Oh, that's a good question. I think skills-wise, a lot of the classes I took were really helpful. In particular, I did a class called magazine writing. My professor was called John Benet, and he unfortunately passed away the year I graduated. So he wouldn't have taught you guys. But that was one of the most amazing classes. He really taught me the skill of finding a good story, which as a freelancer is the best skill you can have. You have to kind of come to these publications equipped with ideas that they'll want to take. And he really, really helped kind of craft what was a good story idea and really taught me how to pitch to an editor. And he was the long-term editor of the New Yorker, so he had so much experience in that department. And he really taught me, the art of finding a good story and shaping that into a great pitch. That was something I learned.
And freelancing is so normal, usual in our industry, in journalism. And there are so many people freelancing right now. How do you maintain your competitiveness?
That's a really good question, and one I'm kind of still learning at the moment. I've only been freelancing for 2 months now, full time. Before I was writing freelance articles, but I was always also full time employed by a various company. So I'm learning how to stay competitive now, and I think a big part of that is having one area that you're really into reporting and that you're really kind of building an area of expertise for yourself. I think that's how you stay competitive, because if you do that, people start coming to you with exclusive stories. Other editors at different outlets start recognizing your name and thinking, oh, I've read her piece on this or that. So I think the way to stay competitive is find your subject, find your area, find your niche, and get good at that.
And you are a highly productive freelance journalist. In your LinkedIn post, you mentioned you have written 10 pieces in last 2 months. What motivates you to be such a highly productive journalist?
The one thing that obviously keeps you productive is you're working for yourself. So if you're not writing an article that week, you're not getting paid that week. So I think that's kind of what's motivating me. Is like, oh wow, I'm completely out in the open by myself right now. I need to keep finding jobs and projects, otherwise no money's coming in. And that can be really scary sometimes, but it can also just be such a good incentive to keep working and to not get knocked down if you don't hear back about some pitches, just to keep trying to get stories and ideas out there so you have an income.
Of course. You tell us about your master's project.
So my master's project was a bit of a bumpy road. I think I found it really hard to settle on one idea. I'm not sure if you had the same. It was really hard to pick a topic and stick with it.
Yes, totally agree.
Yeah.
I would struggle with my professors, about my topic selection.
It was really hard to pick something to write something that long
Especially
about.
New York has so many things happen at the same time. It's really
Yeah.
and also I feel like when you were assigned to your professor, you also need to know what your professor is good at. Their professional area. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's your professor and how's your project?
Well, my professor really didn't like me at first because I kept changing my ideas.
How
And
many pitches did you
I think I had 3
give?
before I found my final one, and he was not happy. And I was put
Glad I
on
had to.
I was put on some kind of, I don't even know, academic watch or something because I was not doing well. But then a good story idea came to me because I was watching the Capitol riots unfold at that time, and 2 women were killed the day of the Capitol riots, and one of them received a lot of national and even international attention because She'd been in the army. She was a veteran, and she was killed. I think she was one of the first people who was sadly killed there. But I came across the story of the second woman who was killed at the Capitol riot. She was called Roseanne Boyland, and she really stood out to me because all of her family were very strong Democrats, and up until a year or two before she was killed, she had been quite liberal. And I thought, oh, this is an interesting story. I wonder what happened kind of in the time between her being killed and her changing her political views. Like, what happened? So I managed to get really good access to a lot of her family were willing to speak to me, and I unearthed this story of this woman who, during the COVID pandemic and lockdown, had been completely radicalized by QAnon and far right conspiracy theories through Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
which I was told by some experts was really common at the time, as a lot of women who and had certain, I guess, like qualities in their background that had been past negative experiences had become really susceptible to being radicalized to more far right views during COVID. So this is kind of what happened to the lady I was covering. Is she had changed her political views in a matter of months
Mm-hmm.
and had gone from being a very liberal or semi-liberal leaning person to being one of the people who was at the front of the riots, kind of like leading the way, and was sadly killed that day. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a really difficult project to write, but it was fascinating, and it taught me so much about conspiracy theories and political ideologies and stuff like that.
As someone doing short form content on the internet, how do you utilize algorithm in a way that won't jeopardize the quality of your content?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I have seen your 60 seconds, right?
Yeah, I did a lot of
That's a short
yeah, a lot
time.
of short videos. Honestly, it's a great question, and I think there is a tendency to cover things in quite a clickbaity way, or cover topics that you think are going to do really well on social media. But I will say, I do think you can cover other really important topics, and as long as you script them in a concise and engaging way, you can still get great reach talking about things that are important to you or that you want to talk about.
In our previous conversation, there were two questions I didn't initially have an answer for. Now I want to circle back on them. So, first question is, what is your number one rule as a journalist?
My number one rule as a journalist is take care. I think there's a few different parts of that rule. I think one part obviously is just like take care of yourself. If you're reporting on something that's difficult, make sure you're resting, make sure you're looking after yourself, make sure you're kind of covering all bases of that care, emotional care, physical care. Really take the time out to rest and look after yourself. But I think the other part of that bit of advice is always remember that when you're, out reporting or meeting people, you're doing a job. And it's hard because I think for me, journalism can feel like a really social profession sometimes.
Yes.
And it can be hard to remember when you're covering a party or a cultural event that's really exciting that you're there for work. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lesson I really learned, especially recently, is take care in how you communicate with people and how you present yourself. I think professionalism is your best defense at all times. So remember that, even if it doesn't feel like you're on a job, just
Yeah.
remember.
Now, the second question, what do you want people to know about you the most?
I think I want people to know that I'm a good combination of being fun but also being serious. I think when I do interviews with people, I want them to really enjoy it and enjoy speaking to me, but also take my work seriously. And I think that can be a hard thing, a hard balance to strike out when you're young and kind of starting out.
Yeah. Now it comes to the end of our show that we always ask our guests the questions. What are suggestions for people who just started their career, who just entered the industry? Because you're experienced journalist in the industry for a long time. So, what are your suggestions?
That's a really good question. I think I remember asking so many people when I was at J school the same question. I think I would just say that have faith. If you really want this to work out and you really want to do this as a job, it will happen. Like opportunities will present themselves. Just keep persevering and keep doing what you're doing, like taking initiative. Starting your own podcast is a great thing to start and a great way to meet people in the industry. So yeah, just keep pushing forward, and opportunities will definitely come.
Thank you so much. That's Olivia Empson, and stay tuned.